welcome to your deep dive on Agile software development.
Oh, this will be fun.
It seems like you're really trying to get a handle on Agile Scrum and,
Right.
and some related methods.
Right.
We've got a really interesting mix of materials to work with.
Yeah.
I'm curious what jumps out at you from this collection.
It's really fascinating to see because we can actually trace the evolution of software development just within these materials.
Oh, wow.
We've got everything from like that rigid waterfall method to the much more flexible Agile approach.
Right.
And even specific implementations like Scrum and Kanban and extreme programming.
Right.
It really highlights a shift in thinking from just fixed plans to this idea of adaptability and customer collaboration.
Yeah. It's kind of like comparing, a meticulously planned cross-country road trip using a paper map.
Oh, yeah.
Versus navigating with a GPS that reroutes you based on real-time traffic.
Oh, I like that.
One source even uses a car analogy to explain minimum viable product.
It's like starting with a skateboard
I've heard that one.
and gradually building up to a car.
Yeah,
Pretty clever way to illustrate the concept,
it is a good one.
isn't it?
Yeah, it really captures the essence of iterative development
Right.
and validated learning,
Yeah.
which are core to Agile.
Yeah.
But before we get into those specifics, I think it's important to understand why Agile came about in the first place.
Okay.
The sources point to some major pitfalls with the traditional waterfall method.
Let's talk about those pitfalls then.
Okay.
What were some of the issues with waterfall that led to the emergence of Agile?
So waterfall, as the name implies,
Mm.
is very linear, sequential.
Okay.
You start by gathering requirements, then you move on to design, coding, integration, testing, and finally deployment.
Gotcha.
Each phase has these strict entry and exit criteria,
Okay.
which makes it really tough to go back and make changes once you've moved on.
Yeah.
It's kind of like building a house where you can't adjust the blueprint.
Once the foundation has been laid,
Yeah,
and that lack of flexibility can be a real problem,
I see what you mean.
especially in software.
So in that house analogy, if
Yeah.
you realize halfway through that you actually need an extra bedroom or you want to move a wall, you're kind of out of luck.
You are.
Yeah.
That's where things can get tricky with software development.
Right.
Because customer needs and market demands are constantly evolving.
Yeah.
Imagine discovering a critical flaw in the software, but you've already completed the coding phase.
Yeah.
Going back to fix it becomes incredibly costly and time-consuming.
Yeah, it's like having to tear down a wall in your house just to adjust the pipe.
Exactly.
So what happens when you encounter these unexpected changes in a waterfall project?
Well, often developers have to rewrite huge chunks of code,
Yeah.
which delays the entire project. And perhaps even more importantly, there's very little opportunity for customer feedback until the very end. So you could end up with a finished product that doesn't actually meet the customer's needs at all.
Right. Which defeats the whole purpose.
Yeah, it does.
That sounds like a recipe for disaster.
It can be.
No wonder Agile emerged as a response to these limitations.
Exactly. And at the heart of this Agile approach is the Agile Manifesto.
Okay.
So let's unpack this Agile Manifesto.
Yeah.
What are the key principles that make it so different from Waterfall?
Well, the Agile Manifesto actually boils down to 4 key values.
Okay.
The first one emphasizes individuals and interactions over processes and tools.
So it's more about empowering the people doing the work
Yeah.
and fostering that collaboration
Right.
over rigidly sticking to a specific process
Exactly.
or relying too heavily on tools.
Yeah, it values people more.
Okay. I can see how that's appealing.
Yeah.
What about the second value?
The second is working software over comprehensive documentation.
Okay.
While documentation is important.
Agile prioritizes delivering functional software that provides value to the customer. You could have mountains of documentation, but if the software doesn't work,
Right.
what's the point?
Yeah, I can see how that shift in focus would be very appealing to customers.
Right.
What about the other 2 values?
Okay, so the third one highlights customer collaboration over contract negotiation. Agile encourages continuous feedback and close collaboration with customers
Okay.
throughout the entire development process.
Gotcha.
It's not about handing off a finished product based on a fixed contract.
Okay.
It's about working together as partners to create something that truly meets the customer's needs.
So you're building a true partnership with the customer
Yeah,
rather than treating them as an outsider.
right.
Okay.
And lastly, Agile values responding to change over following a plan.
Okay.
This might be the most defining characteristic of Agile.
Yeah.
It recognizes that change is inevitable in software development.
Yeah.
And it emphasizes the ability to adapt and adjust plans accordingly.
So it sounds like Agile is all about empowering teams, embracing change, and making the customer an integral part of that development process.
It is.
But how does this actually play out in practice?
That's where Scrum comes in.
Okay.
Think of Scrum as a framework that implements those Agile principles.
Okay.
It provides a set of guidelines and practices for managing and organizing work.
Gotcha.
In a way that aligns with those Agile values.
And our sources mention Scrum's specific roles, the product owner, the Scrum Master, and the development team.
Right.
Can you break down what each of these roles entails within a Scrum team?
Absolutely.
Okay.
The product owner is essentially the voice of the customer.
Okay.
They're responsible for defining and prioritizing the features or user stories that need to be developed.
Yeah.
They create and manage something called the product backlog, which is basically a prioritized wish list of all the desired features for the product.
So they're the ones making sure that the development team is building the right things in the right order.
Exactly.
And you have the Scrum Master.
Right.
They're more like a coach or a facilitator for the team.
Yeah.
They ensure that the Scrum process is being followed correctly. They remove any obstacles that are hindering the team's progress.
Yeah.
And they kind of help the team become more self-organizing and efficient.
They do.
So they're not actually managing the team in a traditional sense.
Fair enough.
They don't have any direct authority over the team members.
Right.
Okay.
It's about guidance and support.
Yeah.
Making sure things run smoothly and empowering the team to do their best work.
And finally, there's the development team, the people who actually build the software.
Yes. They are responsible for designing, coding, testing, and delivering increments of working software at the end of each sprint.
Hold on, sprints. What are those?
A sprint is a time-boxed iteration of work, typically 2 weeks long, where the development team focuses on completing a specific set of user stories from that product backlog we talked about.
Okay.
It starts with a planning meeting where the team selects the stories they'll commit to for that sprint.
How do they decide which stories to take on during a sprint?
The product owner presents the highest priority items from the product backlog.
Okay.
And then the development team determines how much they can realistically accomplish within that 2-week sprint.
Okay.
They break down those user stories into smaller, more manageable tasks and create something called a sprint backlog.
Gotcha. So it's like creating mini to-do lists for the sprint.
Yeah, it is.
I'm guessing daily stand-up meetings are part of this process too?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Every day the team has a short, focused stand-up meeting where they synchronize their work, discuss any roadblocks they're facing, and plan their day.
So it keeps everyone in the loop.
It does.
And it fosters that sense of shared responsibility.
Right.
And our sources mention that Scrum teams should ideally be small,
Yeah.
cross-functional, and co-located.
Right.
Why is that important for effective Scrum implementation?
So small teams, typically around 7 people, plus or minus 2, allow for better communication and collaboration.
Okay.
There's actually research that supports this magic number.
I've heard that before.
Yeah.
Have you?
Too many cooks in the kitchen can make things chaotic.
Exactly.
What about the cross-functional aspect?
That means that the team should have all the necessary skills to complete the work.
Okay.
You need designers, developers, testers, and anyone else needed to take a feature from concept to completion.
Yeah.
This reduces dependencies on other teams and makes for faster decision-making.
That makes sense. It's like having a mini company within a company.
Yeah.
And what about co-location?
While not always possible,
Yeah.
co-location can really help foster a sense of teamwork and enable spontaneous collaboration. Being in the same physical space makes it much easier to quickly resolve issues or bounce ideas off each other.
Okay, so we've covered roles, sprints, and the ideal team structure.
Right.
What happens at the end of a sprint?
At the end of each sprint, the team has a sprint review where they demonstrate the working software they've developed to the stakeholders.
Gotcha.
It's a chance to gather feedback and make sure they're on track.
So that feedback is built right into the process.
It is.
Which makes sense given Agile's emphasis on customer collaboration.
Right.
And then comes the sprint retrospective, where the team reflects on what went well, what could be improved, and how they can work even more effectively next time.
Right.
That's a time for honest self-assessment and continuous improvement.
Right.
This all sounds really beneficial for both the organization and the team members themselves.
It can be.
What are some of the main advantages of using Scrum?
Well, for one, Scrum often leads to increased productivity and faster time to market.
Okay.
Because teams are working in these short, focused bursts.
Right. And getting regular feedback, they can identify and address problems much more quickly, leading to a better product overall.
Okay.
You also tend to see improved product quality
and
higher stakeholder satisfaction.
Sounds like it's a win-win for everyone involved.
It can be.
But I know there are other Agile methodologies out there.
There are.
Our sources mention Kanban as well. How does Kanban differ from Scrum?
So Kanban is another popular Agile framework.
Okay.
But it's a little less structured than Scrum. It focuses more on visualizing the flow of work, limiting work in progress, and maximizing efficiency.
Visualizing work, what does that look like in practice?
Teams using Kanban often have a visual board, literally a board, to track their work.
Okay.
It's divided into columns that represent different stages of the workflow.
Okay.
To do in progress and done, for example.
Gotcha.
Tasks are written on cards that move across the board as they progress through the workflow.
So it's like a physical representation of the team's progress.
Yeah, it is.
I can see how that would be helpful for keeping everyone on the same page.
Yeah.
What about limiting work in progress?
So Kanban emphasizes setting limits on the number of tasks that can be in progress at any given time for each stage.
Okay.
It prevents work from piling up and ensures that things are getting finished before new tasks are started.
Gotcha.
This helps to focus the team's effort and avoid context switching, which can be a real productivity killer.
So Scrum is more about time-boxed iterations with sprints, while Kanban focuses on visualizing and optimizing the flow of work.
It does.
Both are agile,
Yeah.
but with different strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, it depends on the project.
It really depends on the nature of the project and the team's preferences.
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of different approaches, let's talk about some specific practices mentioned in our sources that can be used within an Agile framework. Okay.
You mentioned minimum viable products earlier. We touched on the car analogy.
Yeah.
MVPs are essential in Agile.
They are.
They help teams get valuable feedback early on and avoid wasting time building features nobody wants.
Exactly.
Can you remind us what an MVP is? Why it's so important?
An MVP is the simplest version of a product that can be released to gather feedback from real users.
Gotcha.
It's not about creating a half-baked product. It's about validating a hypothesis and learning as quickly as possible.
I love that car analogy.
Yeah.
It really brings the concept to life.
It does.
Starting with the skateboard to test the basic need for transportation and then iterating based on feedback. Such a smart approach.
It is smart.
And it's not just theoretical. Think about Dropbox. They initially launched with a simple video demonstrating the product's functionality. It wasn't even a functional product at that point.
But it allowed them to gauge user interest and validate their concept before investing heavily in development.
Exactly.
That's a great example.
It is.
It shows how an MVP can be used to test the waters and make sure you're building the right thing before committing significant resources. Precisely. And there are countless other examples.
There are.
Buffer, the social media scheduling tool. They started with just a landing page describing the service. They wanted to see if people would sign up for a product that didn't even exist yet.
Smart.
And guess what they did?
They did.
That validation gave them the confidence to build the actual product.
Yeah, that's a good example.
So it's about minimizing risk.
It is.
By getting that early feedback and iterating based on real user needs. That makes perfect sense.
It does.
Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about some of the testing practices mentioned in our sources, specifically behavior-driven development and test-driven development. These are two powerful techniques that can dramatically improve software quality.
Yeah, they're great.
Can you explain how behavior-driven development works?
So behavior-driven development focuses on defining the desired behavior of a system from the user's perspective. It's about getting everyone, developers, testers, and business stakeholders on the same page about what the software should do and how it should behave.
So it's about clear communication and shared understanding from the start.
Exactly.
In BDD, you write scenarios that describe the system's behavior in very clear, human-readable language. This often involves a specific syntax called gherkin, which uses keywords like given, when, and then to outline the steps of a scenario.
Right.
So you're literally writing out the steps a user would take and how the system should respond.
Yeah, like a conversation almost.
And the beauty of this is that these scenarios can then be automated.
Right.
And used as acceptance tests to ensure that the software meets the defined requirements.
Exactly.
So it's not just about writing documentation, it's about creating executable specifications that actually test the software.
It is.
What about test-driven development?
Okay.
How does that work?
Test-driven development flips the script a bit.
Okay.
Instead of writing tests after the code is written, you write the tests first.
Oh, wow.
It's like creating a blueprint for the code.
Gotcha.
Ensuring it meets the specified requirements from the get-go.
Our sources talk about a red-green refactor cycle in TDD.
Yes.
Okay.
That's a great way to remember the process.
Okay, explain that.
First, you write a test that's designed to fail initially. This is the red phase.
Okay.
Then you write the minimum amount of code needed to make that test pass the green phase.
Gotcha.
Finally, you refactor the code to make it cleaner and more efficient, while still ensuring that the tests pass.
Right.
That's the refactor phase.
So it's an iterative process of constantly testing, coding, and refining the code.
It is.
To meet those predefined requirements.
Right.
It may seem counterintuitive at first.
Yeah, it can.
But TDD can lead to higher code quality, fewer bugs, and a code base that's easier to maintain in the long run.
Exactly.
Plus, it provides a safety net for making changes and adding new features.
Yes.
If a change breaks a test, you know immediately that something needs to be fixed.
Yeah.
Right away.
And finally, there's pair programming.
Okay.
Another practice that seems to be quite popular in Agile.
Yeah, it is.
Can you tell us a bit about how that works?
Pair programming involves two programmers working together at the same workstation.
Two heads are better than one.
That's the idea.
Okay.
One developer, the driver, writes the code, while the other, the navigator, reviews the code in real time, providing feedback and suggestions.
Okay.
It's like having a continuous code review.
Oh, happening as the code is being written.
That sounds like it could lead to much higher code quality.
It does.
Yeah.
Pair programming can catch errors early on, prevent those tunnel vision moments where you might miss an obvious mistake.
Right.
And it can lead to better design decisions.
Okay.
Plus, it's a fantastic way for developers to learn from each other and spread knowledge throughout the team.
So in this first part of our deep dive, we've gone from the limitations of the traditional waterfall model to the core principles of Agile and the specifics of Scrum and Kanban. We've even touched on some key Agile practices like MVPs, BDD, TDD, and pair programming.
Right.
And we've seen how these methodologies and practices prioritize collaboration, customer feedback, and adaptability, all with the goal of creating better software faster.
Good goal.
It's been fascinating so far.
It has.
I can't wait to see where we go next.
Me there.
Stay tuned for part 2.
Okay. Where we'll delve even deeper into the world of Agile software development.
Sounds good. Welcome back to our deep dive into Agile software development.
It's great to be back. We covered a lot of ground in part 1.
We did.
But our exploration of Agile is far from over.
It is.
What's next on our agenda?
Let's shift gears a bit and talk about some of the less glamorous but equally important aspects of Agile development.
Okay.
The sources you shared highlight the importance of things like technical debt and having a clear definition of done.
Those sound intriguing, if not a bit ominous.
Yeah.
Let's start with technical debt.
Okay.
It sounds like something you don't want to accrue.
You don't.
What exactly does that mean in the context of software development?
Imagine you're working on a home renovation project and you decide to take a shortcut by using cheaper materials or skipping some important steps to save time.
Right.
You might meet your initial deadline and budget.
But down the road,
yeah,
those shortcuts could lead to bigger problems and cost you more in the long run.
So it's like kicking the can down the road.
Yeah.
But eventually you'll have to pay the piper.
Exactly.
In software development. Technical debt is similar?
Yeah. It happens when teams prioritize speed over perfection, making compromises in code quality or design to meet a deadline.
Right.
It might get the feature out the door faster, but it can create a code base that's difficult to maintain,
right,
prone to errors,
yeah,
and slow to adapt to new requirements.
So it's like building a house on a shaky foundation.
It is.
It might look fine at first, but over time, the cracks will start to appear.
Exactly.
And just like with a house, it's much easier and cheaper to fix problems early on.
Way easier.
Rather than waiting until they become major issues.
Right.
Our sources mention that technical debt can be invisible to non-technical stakeholders.
Yeah, it can.
Why is it important to make this concept clear to everyone involved, not just the developers?
Because technical debt can significantly impact a project's success in the long term.
Okay.
Imagine you're a project manager.
Okay.
And your team is consistently delivering new features quickly. Everything seems great on the surface.
Right.
But what you might not see is that the code base is becoming increasingly complex and difficult to work with due to accumulated technical debt.
So while it might seem like the team is moving fast, they're actually slowing down in the long run.
Yeah, they are.
Because of that messy code.
Right.
That's why it's crucial to communicate the impact of technical debt to everyone involved.
It is.
Including project managers, product owners, and even clients.
Yeah, everyone.
By being transparent about it, you can make informed decisions about when to take on technical debt strategically.
Right.
Sometimes it's necessary.
It is sometimes.
But also when to prioritize paying it down to avoid those long-term consequences.
Exactly.
So it's about striking a balance between speed and quality.
It is.
Understanding that taking shortcuts can have a cost.
Right.
Now let's move on to the definition of done.
Okay.
Why is it so important for Agile teams to have a shared understanding of what done actually means?
Think about it this way.
Okay.
If you ask 5 different people what cleaning the kitchen means, you're likely to get 5 different answers.
Probably.
Some might consider it done when the dishes are washed.
Right.
Others might include wiping down the counters, sweeping the floor, and even taking out the trash.
So without a clear definition, you could end up with a half-cleaned kitchen and a lot of frustration.
You could.
It's the same in software development. Without a clear definition of done, you risk ending up with partially completed tasks, rework confusion, and ultimately a less reliable product.
Exactly.
Having that shared understanding from the start ensures that everyone knows what's expected and when a task can truly be considered complete.
Yeah, and it prevents a lot of arguments, too.
So it's more than just checking a box on a to-do list?
It is.
It's about defining a set of criteria that must be met for a task to be considered truly done.
Exactly.
A good definition of done should encompass all the necessary steps.
Yeah.
From code completion and testing to documentation and sometimes even deployment to a staging environment.
It might.
Can you give us a concrete example of what a comprehensive definition of done might look like?
Let's say a team is developing a new feature for an e-commerce website that allows users to save their payment information for faster checkout.
Okay, I've seen that. Yeah, makes sense.
A simple definition of done might just be code complete.
Okay.
But a more robust definition would include things like the code has been written and reviewed by another developer.
Okay.
All unit tests have been written and are passing. Integration tests have been written and are passing.
Okay.
Ensuring the new feature works seamlessly with the rest of the system.
Gotcha.
User acceptance testing has been completed.
Okay.
Confirming that the feature meets the customer's expectations and is easy to use.
Makes sense.
The feature has been documented so other developers understand how it works and can maintain it in the future. The feature has been deployed to a staging environment for final verification and testing in a production-like setting.
Yeah.
And the feature has been approved for release by the product owner.
Gotcha.
Ensuring it aligns with the overall product vision and goals.
Wow, that's quite a checklist.
It is.
It seems like a lot.
Yeah.
But I can see how it would prevent misunderstandings and ensure higher quality.
It does.
It might seem like extra work up front.
It does.
But it actually saves time and headaches down the road.
Yeah, it does.
By reducing rework and ensuring a smoother development process.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense.
It does.
And speaking of ensuring quality, our sources mention a few specific practices Agile teams use to prevent defects and ensure the reliability of their software.
Right.
One that comes up frequently is continuous integration. What's the main idea behind this practice?
Continuous integration, or CI as it's often called,
Okay.
is all about integrating code changes frequently.
Okay.
Ideally multiple times a day.
Wow.
Instead of waiting until the end of a sprint or a development cycle to merge everyone's work,
Right.
developers continuously integrate their changes into a shared code repository.
I imagine this helps to avoid those nightmare scenarios.
Yeah, it does.
Where you have conflicting code changes that are difficult to reconcile.
Exactly.
By integrating frequently, you can detect and resolve conflicts early on before they become major headaches.
Right.
It's much easier to fix a small conflict today than a massive one a week from now.
Way easier.
And our sources mention that CI often involves automated build and test processes.
It does.
Can you explain how that works?
Absolutely. Whenever a developer commits their code changes, the CI system automatically builds the software and runs a suite of automated tests. These tests could be unit tests, integration tests, or even end-to-end tests.
Wow.
Depending on the setup.
So it's like having a robot QA tester that continuously checks for problems.
Exactly.
That's a great way to put it.
And this automated testing provides immediate feedback to the developer. If a code change breaks a test, they know right away that something needs to be fixed.
Makes sense.
This helps prevent bugs from making it into the main code base.
Gotcha.
And ensures that the software is always in a working state.
It sounds like CI can dramatically streamline the development process.
It can.
And improve software quality.
Yeah.
What about continuous delivery, or CD? How does that relate to continuous integration?
Continuous delivery takes the principles of continuous integration a step further. While CI focuses on integrating code changes frequently, CD is about ensuring that the software is always in a releasable state.
So theoretically, you could release new features or updates to the software at any time.
Yeah, you could.
With continuous delivery.
That's the goal.
That sounds incredibly efficient.
It is.
But I imagine not every organization wants or needs to release new features every day.
You're right. Continuous delivery doesn't necessarily mean releasing every day.
Right.
It's about having the ability to release frequently and reliably. But the actual release cadence can be adjusted based on the needs of the business and the product.
Makes sense.
Some might release daily. While others might release weekly, bi-weekly, or even monthly.
So it's about having the confidence that your software is always ready to go?
Yeah, it is.
Giving you the flexibility to release when it makes the most sense.
Right.
And this can be a huge competitive advantage.
It can.
Allowing businesses to respond quickly to customer feedback, market changes, and new opportunities.
Right.
So CI and CD are all about automating and streamlining the software development lifecycle.
They are.
Making it faster, more efficient, and more reliable.
Exactly.
Now, before we move on, I want to circle back to something we touched on earlier, retrospectives.
Yeah.
We briefly discussed them in the context of Scrum.
Right.
But I think they deserve a bit more attention.
They do.
Given their importance in Agile. Can you elaborate on what retrospectives are? And why they're so crucial for continuous improvement?
Retrospectives are a time for reflection and learning. They provide a dedicated space for the team to step back from their day-to-day work and think about how they can improve their processes and collaboration.
Our sources emphasize that retrospectives should be held regularly.
Yes.
Ideally at the end of each sprint.
Ideally.
Yes, regularity is key.
It is.
If you only do retrospectives once in a blue moon, you miss out on opportunities to address issues early on and make incremental improvements.
Yeah, you do.
It's like waiting until your car breaks down completely before changing the oil.
It is.
So what typically happens during a retrospective meeting?
The team gets together in a safe and collaborative environment. It's important to create a space where everyone feels comfortable sharing their thoughts and ideas openly and honestly. The focus is on reflecting on what went well during the sprint, what didn't go so well, and what they could do differently next time.
Gotcha.
The goal isn't to point fingers or place blame, but rather to identify concrete actions the team can take to work more effectively.
So it's about honest self-assessment.
It is.
And a commitment to continuous improvement. And there are various techniques that teams use to structure their retrospectives.
There are.
One common method mentioned in the sources is start, stop, continue. Can you explain how that works?
It's a simple but effective framework.
The team brainstorms ideas for things they should start doing, not things they should stop doing.
Gotcha.
And things they should continue doing.
So start doing. Could be new practices or tools that might improve the team's workflow.
Right.
Stop doing could be activities that are no longer helpful or are actually hindering their progress.
Right.
And continue doing are things that are working well.
Yeah.
And that the team wants to make sure they maintain.
Exactly.
By the end of the retrospective, the team should have a list of actionable items.
Yeah, they should.
That they can implement in the next sprint.
Right.
It's about turning reflector into action.
It is.
I love that.
It's important.
It's all about making small, incremental improvements over time.
Exactly. And it's amazing how these small changes can add up to significant improvements in team performance and product quality.
So in this second part of our deep dive, we've gone beyond the basics of Agile.
And explored some of the less obvious but equally crucial aspects of Agile development, managing technical debt, defining done clearly, implementing continuous integration and delivery, and fostering a culture of continuous improvement through retrospectives.
Right.
We've seen that Agile is about much more than just specific methodologies or frameworks. It's a mindset, a way of approaching work that values collaboration, adaptability, and a constant desire to learn and improve.
Exactly.
And it's been fascinating to see how these principles can be applied not just to software development, but to other fields as well.
Yeah, it has.
I'm already eager to hear what's in store for us in the final part of our deep dive.
I think you'll find it quite insightful. We'll be wrapping things up and exploring some key takeaways that you can apply to your own work, no matter what field you're in.
Stay tuned. Welcome back. It feels like we've been on this incredible journey through the world of Agile software development.
It has.
From the limitations of waterfall to the intricacies of Scrum and Kanban, and even those powerful Agile practices, we've covered a lot.
We have.
But I think one of the most important takeaways is that Agile is more than just a set of rules or frameworks for building software.
It is more than that.
Our sources really emphasize that Agile principles can be applied to all sorts of projects and teams, not just software development.
It's true.
So how can someone who's not in software development apply these Agile principles to their own work?
Let's say you're planning a marketing campaign. Instead of sticking to a predetermined plan, you could use Agile principles to break down the campaign into smaller, more manageable phases. You could gather feedback from your target audience early and often and adapt your approach based on what you learn.
So it's about being adaptable, iterative, and customer-focused, even in fields that aren't traditionally associated with software development.
Exactly. It's about empowering teams to make decisions, take ownership of their work, and be responsive to change.
Our sources also talk about the importance of embracing change and experimentation in an Agile environment.
It's important.
It seems counterintuitive to some.
Yeah, it can.
But I can see how it could be a strength.
That's a crucial point.
Yeah.
Agile is all about learning and adapting.
Right.
It encourages teams to try new things, experiment with different approaches, and constantly seek ways to improve.
Yeah.
And importantly, it's about creating a culture where it's okay to fail.
Right.
Failure is seen as an opportunity to learn and grow, not something to be feared.
That makes a lot of sense. If you're constantly experimenting and trying new things,
you're
bound to stumble sometimes.
You are.
But the key is to learn from those mistakes and get better.
That's right.
It seems like Agile can help teams become more resilient and innovative.
It can.
So after this deep dive into Agile, what's the one big takeaway you hope our listener is walking away with?
I hope it's clear that Agile is more than just a buzzword. It's a fundamental shift in how we think about work. It's about empowering teams, embracing change, and focusing on delivering value to the customer.
It's a powerful message.
It is.
And as you said, these Agile principles are applicable far beyond the realm of software development.
They are.
They can be applied to any project or team that wants to be more adaptable, collaborative, and successful.
Exactly.
So think about your own work. Where could you benefit from more flexibility, more collaboration, more continuous improvement?
That's a great question.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Oh, it was my pleasure.
We look forward to exploring more with you soon.
Yeah, I look forward to it too.